decide the only way to earn their trust is to impress them. Drop down onto all fours and do my Spider-Man crawl so they'll see how agile I am. They immediately scream and all run away. How weird. Run after them. Matching their pace is surprisingly easy, maybe cause the girls had short legs. Follow Weird Al into the forest. The forest shields the moonlight so I can only see his silhouette. See that thing? It looked human but its movements. Can't think of anything to say so just nod. Weird Al keeps talking, saying how useful his air would be right now. No idea what he means. Eventually meet up with the others. Celebrations all round. Finally they accept me. They must have been impressed by my Spider-Man crawl after all. Angry Steve says they should try to find the car. What about Ben? I muster in my best Weird Al impression to show I'm one of many talents. I hate to say it, James, but I think he's gone, says the girl who's not Mary Jane. Who on earth is James? Suddenly Mary Jane stops walking. What is it, Sam? Angry Steve asks. Mary Jane whispers in his ear. He raises his arm and starts pointing at us while counting. Ben's not here, he says very slowly. Weird Al replies yeah, before suddenly standing up straight. He just screams run and takes off. Everyone scatters. Begin to think my new friends are a little weird. Decide to go home. Never did find out what happened to Ben, but that forest is full of ditches so he was probably just playing hide and seek. Still can't believe Weird Al and Angry Steve were playing in the water. My dad says the factory's chemicals mean that bathing in it will make your hair fall out for sure. Anyway, that's my weird story.
Requesting histories, legends and mythos of the Native Americans. Some months ago Anon said that he should wait until snow had settled to tell the stories to not anger the spirits. If this Anon read this, please write your stories, and all other Native Anons are welcome too.
I'm not native per se, but us Quebecois had lots of links and relations with our native allies to a point where even our legends and traditions mingled. I'll post a bit of them to help your thread along. The first one I really love, it's a twist on the wild hunt called the Chasse Gallery. We'll put pick related. It's a cursed canoe that one can barter for with the devil. It can fly through the sky and will fall if you say the name of God in vain, swear and curse words. It will plummet and you'll die if it touches the top of a church bell tower, and you and your mates will lose your souls to the devil if you do not bring it back before midnight. Another interesting one. Werewolves were a common thing here, and settlers often talked about them to the natives, to which the tales of the Wendigo would often also pop out. The Wendigo being a cursed being that ate human flesh in the boreal forest and was cursed to become a ghoulish deer-like being, often shown non-deer-like in original tales. The werewolf being here a sinner that did such horrible sins that it was cursed by the devil to take an animal form with murderous intents, often tied to Wendigo in term of shared mythos. Obviously, Native American mythos is pretty diverse. My own tribe's legends are pretty non-existent for a few reasons, so these stories will be from varying tribes. This is the Cree legend of the Paka, a skeleton monster. A Paka is made when a person dies of starvation, or when cursed for their wrongdoing in life. This creature looks like, well, an animated human skeleton. Unlike most skeleton monsters in Native American lore, yes, there are more, Paka may actually be benevolent at times, healing the sick or blessing a future hunt, but only if you give him an offering of his favorite food, animal bladder filled with melted fat. The Paka is known for giving off a bone-chilling cackle, which announces his presence to all nearby. One Cree story about Paka is as follows. After a long and successful day of hunting beaver, a man and his friend made camp in a clearing and quickly fell asleep. In the middle of the night, one of the hunters awoke, noting a feeling of displeasure in the air. He turned around to see a Paka, sitting next to the campfire in an obviously irritated position. The hunter described the Paka as being made of bone and some skin, with a single thick strand of hair on the top of his head. The hunter awoke his companion, and they attempted to figure out how to soothe this obviously annoyed creature. The pair decided to offer the skeleton half of a beaver that they killed, to which he initially refused. The hunters eventually cut the half beaver into bite-sized pieces and threw them into the fire. With this, the Paka seemed pleased, and wandered back into the darkness. It should be noted that a Paka is different from the being Paka, or Pogak. While both are skeleton monsters with similar names, Paka is a unique entity. Unlike the Paka, which a person can become after dying of the aforementioned circumstances. This is the story of water babies, Native American spirits which lure people to their watery deaths by mimicking the cries of babies. These spirits are said to inhabit some freshwater lakes and rivers. The description of these beings vary. Some tribes claim that they appear as normal human infants, sometimes with fish tails, while other tribes claim that they are reptilian-like creatures that can simply make baby noises. Hearing one of these cries is not a good sign, and is generally considered to be a death omen of sorts. As one can probably imagine, giving into the lure and actively seeking out and attempting to find/rescue the baby never ends well for the person doing so. These spirits, the non-reptilian kind, are said to be created when an infant drowns. The story of the water babies at Massacre Rocks is one of the more well-known legends. In Idaho, near the modern-day city of Pocatello, there is a site known as Massacre Rocks. At one time, a Shoshone tribe lived in the area, and were suffering from a terrible famine. Unable to feed their newborn infants, mothers of the tribe were forced to drown their young children in the surrounding lakes and streams. Legend states that these infants grew gills, tails, and scales, subsisting off small fish and tadpoles. To this day, they are said to live in the area, around Fort Hall Reservation, attempting to lure in and drown unsuspecting humans. I should mention that many Western Native American tribes happen to share this legend. One more story for tonight since I have time. This is the legend of the Horned Serpent. The Horned Serpent is one of the most prominent and important mythological figures in Native American culture. This is mostly among many different Eastern American and some Canadian tribes. These tribes don't regard this creature as animal, but rather revere it as a sort of mythological spirit, sometimes even a god. The serpent is described as living in freshwater lakes and rivers, typically appearing as a massive serpent with horns and long teeth. Horned serpents are described as, among other things, being able to shapeshift, control the weather, hypnotize people, and turn invisible. The story of the deserted children, which parallels the story of Hansel and Gretel, oddly enough, features a more benevolent horned serpent. In the story, a tribe sends their young out to play in the forest, then packs up camp and abandons the kids. The children return to find the camp empty, and decide to travel to the nearby river. They get to the river and ford it, only to find an old woman on. This woman is the spirit of a dead witch. The woman invites them into her tent for the night, to which the children oblige. In the middle of the night, she starts killing off the kids, leaving only one girl and her brother. After giving the girl some challenging and repetitive tasks, the children decide to run away. In doing so, they come across a horned serpent. The serpent promises to help them if they pick the lice off him. They do so, and the serpent takes them to the outskirts of their tribe's camp. Upon returning, the serpent finds the witch, who demands to be brought to the children. Like with the children, the horned serpent asks the witch to pick the lice off him. The witch refuses and insults him, and the serpent proceeds to drown her. This is the story of my town. There used to be a cave near a river here where a cyclops lived. Whenever he met travelers, he lured them to the cave and offered them food and shelter. In the middle of the night, when the guests were sleeping, the cyclops killed them and ate them afterwards. Once, a man, knowing this, went to his cave, but he waited for the cyclops to sleep and stabbed him in the eye. The cyclops, blind, couldn't defend himself and was killed by the man. The town is nowadays called after the cyclops and the cave is still there. I'm not 100% native, but the tribes near me had stories of the Hockomock Swamp. It means where the spirits dwell in Algonquin and Wampanoag. They wouldn't go near it until the settlers did battle and forced them to flee into it for refuge. Now their ghosts, along with a whole bunch of other high strangeness, are seen in and around the area. There's a rock, called Anawan Rock out in the forest, where if you light a fire and wait, natives' ghosts will come and sit with you. There's also the Pukwudgies, small porcupine/Bigfoot creatures that the natives ran into quite a bit. They're apparently still around and will lure adventurers out into the woods, leading them towards a cliff's edge which they'll then push them off. Not a long story, but I come from a closed community in the south. I am not allowed to name names for our safety, but we have some of our caves marked at the entrances with pictures of bad spirits, and those are warnings not to go into that specific cave. Some of these can be really old spirits who were here upon creation, and some who were people who inhabit the caves and regions. The locals know not to go in, but the tourists complain, swearing up and down the tunnels move. No one ever goes too far in. I've got some stories from my tribe. We're from the west coast of Canada and have a few strange creatures. The first is Junakwa, or the wild woman of the woods. She's tall and skinny with long dark hair, black skin, and bright red lips. Her masks are usually carved to show her in the midst of her call, who. She is a giant and an ogress that preys upon children, snatching them in her basket and bringing them home to her lair in the mountains to feed herself and her children. She prefers to hunt at night and when it's especially foggy. If you can capture one of her children, it is said that she will grant you wealth in exchange for it, as she is known to hoard things like a magpie. Another story says she was tricked by a tribe and forced into a great fire. The ashes that rose out from it became mosquitoes. Another one is Bakwaz, or the wild man of the woods. He is a dead thing that lives in the woods in an invisible house where all the spirits of the drowned are said to gather. He enjoys tricking people who end up lost in the woods, offering them food and drink that will bring you over into the realm of the dead. He's often thought of as a consort of Junakwa and father of her children. Last one is Bakspex Woylanexiwe, or cannibal at the north end of the world, or he who first ate man at the mouth of the river. He is attended by a number of equally vile creatures. His wife Komi Naga, wearing red and white cedar bark, and his slave king Kalalala, bring him his human meals. Kokskokshwalenexiwe, the raven at the north end of the world, pecks out his victim's eyes. Hoxhogwaxtwi, Hoxhog of the sky, a giant crane, cracks skulls with its very long beak and devours the brains. Galogjayi, crooked beak of the sky, and Nenchtalit, grizzly bear of the door, stand guard. These monstrous bird ogres are all an extension of Bakspokwalanextsiwe himself. They are his eyes and ears, and nothing can hide from them. Bakspexwalanexiwe is the key figure in the Hamatsa secret society, or the Cannibal Society. He is invoked in a ritual dance by new initiates of the Hamatsa society, where they invite the spirit of the cannibal in, and have to overcome it. The dancer gnashes his teeth and in some cases will try to bite onlookers. Healers come out with rattles made from human skulls and begin the process of pacification and cleansing. The legend of Bakspex Woylanexiwe is retold with various dancers. Human flesh was said to be consumed during the ceremony by the one possessed, though he was forced to vomit it up afterward with seawater.
Quebecois are wise in occultism. We are always on the lookout for cannibals. I myself know how to dispel a Wendigo by ceremoniously eating the food of an animal with respect, dignity, and flavor, being French and very good at cooking. Dad helped me for the first rituals. I will do the next with my friends. It is necessary to get Wendigos watching though. Animals know, the winds die, the cracking between the leaves without a visibility of a 100-pound creature breaking the branches every few minutes while I smoke hashish on the cliffside.
The Cherokee people of Lower Appalachia have their own version of the Fae with striking similarities to the Celtic mythology of the fair folk. Called the Nunahi, commonly spelled Nunahi, which means the people who live anywhere in the Cherokee language, they were said to only appear to humans when they wished to be seen and took the guise of normal humans when interacting. They lived in underground townhouses beneath rocky mountain peaks, and their ghostly singing and drums could be heard by hunters in the mountains, but when they would go toward the sound, it would shift about and suddenly seem to be coming from behind them or from some other direction, so that the person hearing the sound would never be able to find where it was coming from. The Nunahi were very friendly to the Cherokee and often helped lost wanderers, especially during the winter. The Nunahi would take the person into their warm townhouses until the person was rested and ready to return home, if the person chose to do so. A well-known story tells about a man named Yahuwah, who had become separated from a hunting party. His friends searched for him for a long time but eventually gave up and returned to their village, grieving for Yahuwah, whom they believed was dead. The Nunahi found Yahuwah and brought him back to their townhouse to live with them. Yahuwah became immortal and lived with the Nunahi for a long time until he began to miss his friends and family. One night Yahuwah went back to his village to see his friends and family, and he told them what had happened. When they asked Yahuwah to eat dinner with them, he said he could not, for he had eaten the food of the Nunahi and could never again eat human